I don't have a good segue onto the next topic, which is road paving. The city paving program is pretty close to complete. I think we probably have 2 or 3 more weeks of city paving. Carlisle was closed, I think, yesterday or the day before for paving. That project is, I would say, adjacent to our 2024 OPWC, Ohio Public Works Commission, application and award. So we paved up to a certain point, but if you've been on that road, you'll recognize that there's actually a slip happening. And so our 2024 OPWC application had 3 components to it. One was some paving projects, minimal. 2 was, if you're on Bellevue going up the hill on the right, there are smaller blocks that we've built as sort of an ad hoc or impromptu sort of retaining wall. Those will be replaced with a permanent retaining wall because of that slip on Bellevue. And then the final part of the OPWC project is slip repair on Carlisle going up the hill and around the corner. We don't want the road to slip off down the hill. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we've already closed the road once this week. It will likely be closed again this week on either the 27th or 28th to do soil borings for the slip project, which is being designed for next year. Speaking of road paving, the first component of the Appalachian Community Grant Project that will be done is the paving program. Related to that, that is the roads around the park. It is likely that we will start to see some construction within the next 45 days, most likely on Water Street. Water Street originally had a significant amount of the design project that would add sidewalk width to that corridor, but as pricing has come in, like everything else in the world, those sidewalk expenses have been very high. And so we've backed off of widening sidewalks there, but all of the same traffic calming, the roadway diet plans that council approved would still be happening. So when you see construction begin to ramp up on Water Street, that is out of our regular paving program, but into the ACGP program. Staying on the theme of paving, for those who don't know, the paving levy did not make it to the Board of Elections, so that will not be on the ballot. That puts us in a position where the levy, which has been in place now for 9.5 years, will not collect income tax starting January 1st. So today our income tax is 2%. It will go down to 1.8% starting January 1st, 2026. That does a couple things for us, but mostly it means we don't have enough money to do a standard paving program in 2026. That said, we had always planned, we being council, my office and the auditor's office, for, in essence, a gap year. It was a renewal levy. Some of you remember several years ago, the health district did not pass a renewal levy, so they went without a levy for a year, basically. We have positioned ourselves so that we will do, we can still do a paving program in 2026, but it will be scaled back. We will use some of the money that we are holding back this year from this year's paving program. Our fall of 2025 OPWC application, which in recent years we've used for things like stormwater and slips on roadways, will basically be primarily paving. So we will be able to do some paving still next year, just not to the scale that we've done in the past several years. And it would be my hope that council would consider entertaining putting that item on the ballot in the spring of 2026. And so we move on and we keep operating. I wanted to touch on Councilman Barnes' comments, mostly on the Chillicothe Youth Football League. Last year, that league has grown really exponentially over the last several years, and their home in the park has not, it's grown in the park. And the pressure point that they reached last year was largely around parking. We were working through an MOU that would allow them to park basically on the northern pod of the softball fields that are across the street from where the football league plays. It is a high volume of traffic and parking, and so the essence of the MOU is making sure that any turf damage that is done can be repaired, because the leagues and the kids that play softball in those fields also deserve nice fields and not broken ankles. And then the last thing I'll close on, I'm trying to think I have something happy to close on. The last thing I'll close on is that the auditor's office and I have been working quite a bit on different projections and scenarios for what the closure of Pixel looks like for city operations. If you look at cash on hand today, our unappropriated balance may be around $4 or $5 million. That's not cash on hand, I'm sorry, that's unappropriated. Cash on hand can fluctuate. That's just for the general fund. And so in our review, different funds, as you might imagine, have different levels of security. So the general fund has a decent amount of reserves. Parks and Recreation, on the other hand, if you estimate that Parks and Recreation gets 0.1% and a portion of that goes to capital, and we estimate, if we just say off the cuff, that Parks and Recreation would lose 10% of the income tax it receives, in a fund like that, the revenue is not diversified. It is basically just the income tax. Now, the general fund, there's all kinds of different revenue streams. So 10% income tax on the general fund might not hurt like 10% revenue income tax lost in Parks and Rec would hurt, which, let's call it $80,000. That's an employee. And so in some divisions and departments and funds, we have started working through how we can start saving money today, because at least the way I think about it is retaining permanent employees is my goal as we weather the situation with Pixel and the ripple effects it might have. So we've started the budget compilation process, and we've asked department heads to attempt for each individual department an initial attempt at 20% cut in operation expenses. That's other than personnel. Now, if you guys are anything like me or my house, the electric bill feels like it's doubled since last summer. So we are dealing with situations where a lot of the operation expense is out of the control of the department heads, but we have them tackling that topic. The first steps that we've taken in terms of short-term or right now savings is, as you might imagine, we have lots of seasonal help for the summer, mowing the grass, that sort of thing. So certain seasonal periods and those temporary employees, those periods will be shortened to get sort of the quickest relief. Then we'll look to attrition and other ways to figure out how to save money. And ultimately, the question I think that we will pose to City Council is, with the operations that we have today, what burn rate for each fund will we tolerate in a budget that we pass, right? Are we okay with burning through $1 million of the reserve in the first year? Are we okay with burning through 25,000, whatever it is? You have to lay that on top of state law requirements that require passing a balanced budget. And so, does a balanced budget mean revenue now plus reserves, which I would argue this is what rainy day type funds are for, or not. But the impact to the city is going to be real. City employees and operations is going to be real, and it's going to be fast. Excel, for example, was a very large consumer of water. And so you can imagine the water fund, but how does it have any revenue at all from that sort of thing, from the consumption of water and those rates. And so figuring out how we sustain not only a major loss on the income tax side, but on a user of utilities is going to be a big task for us to tackle in the coming months. And so I say that just to prepare the community and city council for potential reduction in services. For example, when we do leaf pickup in the fall, that's mostly seasonal workers, or a lot of seasonal workers. What our leaf pickup program looks like next year versus how we do sort of provide the basics is kind of the question we need to pose to ourselves right now. And so that, I think, is probably enough for tonight. Thank you.